This is the Continuity Engine High Availability or HA demo. And in this demo, we're going to have a basic demonstration of Continuity Engine's capabilities to respond to service failures. And so this will demonstrate how we can react in the event of a disaster to any type of outage within the application server. So what we're going to do now, this is the engine management service. I'm going to go ahead and log in. And as we log into the Continuity Engine Management Service, this is our management layer, if you will. It is a Tomcat web service. It runs on either a non-protected Windows server or a desktop. It is very thin. If we go into the protected servers, you will now see a set of servers that either in a pair configuration or a trio configuration, and it can tell us the statuses of the cluster as it is right now. So if I click on the SQL 2K12, this is an HA pair. Notice that it has a primary server that is our production server, and the secondary is high availability. If I go over to the Services tab, this has a list of all of our services that we're protecting with Continuity Engine. Since this is a SQL server, you will see the SQL services. And you can actually sort through them by all of the plugins that are active on the system. So if you have a SQL server, you will actually see a SQL tab here, but we also have file and print services installed. So we can see those services that are running. IAS is also installed. We can see those services, and also core services that we're protecting. In this case, the DHCP client, and also one of our other products that is part of Continuity Engine, which is Scope Data Collector Service. So what we're going to do is we're going to concentrate right now on the SQL Server services. And if I click on the SQL Server agent itself, and I go over to the actions where I want to edit, notice that we have the ability to not only manage these individual services for the application, but we also have the ability to put recovery actions on them. So those recovery actions are pretty straightforward in the fact that you can either, by default, you can have them recover the service, but you have other options available to you. So you can restart the application. You can also restart the VM. You can migrate the VM via VMware HA. It supports storage vMotion, and also vMotion with full VM reset. So these are all part of our recovery actions, and you can set these by default to whatever you'd like. In this case, we're going to set it to auto switchover if we lose the service as part of this demonstration. If we also want to set up a third-party application, we can always do that. Since Continuity Engine has what we call the application management framework, we can add any application that runs on Windows. So we just go to Add Service, and notice that it gives us a list of all of the services that are in the Service Control Manager. So for the particular application that you have that you want to protect with Continuity Engine, you just select the services, you add them here. You then tell Continuity Engine how you want this to be protected. So you're going to have it running on the active server, and you're going to have the services stopped on the passive server. So it's an active passive. We're going to monitor those services on the targets, and we're going to stop and start the services when we do these switchover processes. Now, you also can, at the time of setup, you can actually define what those recovery actions are going to be, and you can do up to 3 of them. So if you see your services fail for some reason, you can always recover the service. That means it's just going to restart the service. But again, you can, for every failure up to 3, you can have a different recovery action. So some of our customers will go recover the service first, and then they will try to restart the application, and then finally they do an auto switchover. So these are different types of rules that we have built into Continuity Engine as part of the application management framework. We also have the ability to set rules for how we want to monitor the performance of the application. So with the application management framework, there are 3 different types of plugins that we can add. There is what we call the operational plugins, which define the file filters, the directories and files we want to replicate, the services we want to protect, and the registry keys we need to replicate also. There are also additional capabilities that we can build into the plugin. So the performance layer allows us to take WMI and perfmon counters and set threshold rule sets on them so that we can see the performance of the application and provide you with a quick recovery of those applications. And then there's what we call application-aware advanced capabilities that allow us to use third-party APIs to talk to the application server and to be able to proactively look into the server, maybe using APIs as a user. We can log in as a user, do standard user layer, layer actions, if you will, and then we can respond to those if those actions fail. So all this comes together with Continuity Engine to provide you a full continuous availability model. Now, if we look at one of these, buffer cache hit ratio, we can look at this by editing it and notice that there is a threshold rule set here. So it says, and these are perfmon counters that have been rule enabled. So now we can put a threshold around it. So if it's greater than 90%, we test it every 1800 seconds. If there's a failure for some reason, we can try and have an interval for retries. So and again, we can have up to 3 recovery actions. So as you can see here, the recovery actions are very similar to that of the services. So you can select them as you need them for the application. Okay, so now let's go back to our services. And as we mentioned, we are going to fail a service, and that's going to be this guy right here. And if I go to edit, notice that it automatically switches over if this service fails. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to demonstrate how to recover from a service failure. So the first thing we're going to do is I'm going to set up a ping of this server, which should ping at 0.27, but I'm going to use the T option to keep it continuously pinging. And so before we do that, I'm going to also create a new database on here. We'll call this Linda. So we have Linda's database and we have Jennifer's database that we just created. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and stop the services, interrupt them for the agent service. Now what Continuity Engine does is it has multiple rule sets that are actually executing simultaneously. And there's up to 100 of these that are running within a few minute time period. So as it runs through all of these different rules, it will come across the one that is monitoring the service for failure. And then eventually what's going to happen in about another 3 or 4 seconds here, it will recognize that the service is down and it will initiate the process for restoring business services on your secondary server. So as it's going through this process, it will then shut down whatever remaining SQL services that are running on the primary, hide it from the network, and then it goes over to the secondary and then reveals it to the network, spins up the SQL services, and then assigns the original IP address to that server and restores business services. So by the time this is completed and the transitioning is done, you will have a secondary server that is active on the network, which is right here, as you can see. And now it, again, has the 0.27 IP address. If I go here, notice that we only had, it was so fast on the turnover that we only missed two pings. So it's very, very fast, very efficient. Now, if I go over to the database server, I'm going to create a new one for Michelle. All right, so now I have Michelle's database. Linda's that we created on the primary, and the one that was existing second. So what's nice about Continuity Engine in this use case, this high availability use case, is that when the failover is complete, you don't have to switch back. You can leave the primary once it comes back online to monitor the secondary. So if I go in to actions, all I have to do is either reboot the primary server to bring it back online, or if it's something that can be fixed without the reboot process and we can restart the services, all we have to do is start up Continuity Engine. And in about 30, 40 seconds or so, Continuity Engine will be brought back online. It will start the replication process to resync the primary server up to the secondary server. So once this is done, secondary will be still active, primary will be fully synced up, and then primary now starts to monitor the secondary. So now if anything happens to the primary server or the secondary server, then the primary would automatically see that there's an outage on the secondary and then would promote itself to active status. So this is a great solution for having a hands-off approach to business continuity. So once we fix the problem, we can now be rest assured that Continuity Engine is back in place, ready to protect those application servers. And as you can see here, it's back online and everything is green. That means all the data is synchronized up. We have a 0 recovery point and everything is replicating. So now the primary is ready on standby. So this concludes our demonstration of high availability, or HA, with Continuity Engine.